So the first topic that we actually have on the list today is one that came through on Instagram, and I'm also going to tie it to one that I found on Reddit as well. So the Instagram response said, "Why is everyone so in love with Darcy if Tilney exists?" So referring to Henry Tilney from Northanger Abbey. And the Reddit post said, most women would hate being married to Darcy, even a modern version of him, especially because he can't take a joke. He must learn to laugh at himself. The real perfect man is Henry Tilney. So I was like, I wanted to put them together because I was like, wow, that's like two people saying the exact same thing. And I was like, we've got to chat about this because I feel like a lot of people jump on that like Mr. Darcy is like this perfect man or like the perfect catch. And I'm like, I feel like Henry does kind of fall to the wayside for a lot of people a lot of the time.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I see both sides of it. But I agree with you. I think Mr. Darcy gets way too much credit. Like I feel like placed way higher than all the other Austen men. And I don't think that's fair. I see why someone would want to be with Mr. Darcy. Like Mr. Darcy has that chivalry. I think the fact that he saves Lydia from disgrace and he comes back and asks Elizabeth a second time and disregards his family and his aunt's opinion. I think the reason that people might see Mr. Darcy as a like more powerful character is that he really puts himself on the line for Elizabeth in so many ways. Like if you think about it, he shows up with such effort to win her. And Henry Tilney, I wouldn't say is a super chivalrous character in that way. He doesn't really do anything to fight for Catherine, in my opinion. But I would totally fall for Henry Tilney over Mr. Darcy, I think, because he's so playful. He has such a funny sense of humor. They have shared interests. He's kind of witty. He pokes fun at her a little bit. Like, he is so charming. Yeah. What do you think about him?
So, yeah, I do love Henry, but something that I was thinking about from what you said is, do you think it's because of the heroine that that's the case? Because you have to work harder for Elizabeth, because Elizabeth is just like so outspoken, such her own person. Like she's just so opinionated and just isn't going to take any BS from anyone. And also you've got to bear in mind that Elizabeth had been fed all of this information from Wickham, so she's got all these like preconceptions about Darcy, so he really has to fight for her. He's not like starting on an even playing field here. Like he's got to like build her back up to like a normal level and then make her fall in love with him. Like there's a lot he's got to do. Whereas for Henry, Catherine's like smitten with him from the first ball. She's literally just like, when will I see Henry next? I feel like Northanger Abbey is such an easy romance. I feel like that the biggest dynamic in Northanger Abbey is actually the friendship with people like Isabella Thorpe. In terms of like the romance side of the storyline, I think it's super easy going. They don't have like too many problems to deal with in their storyline. I think the biggest one is that Catherine assumes that Henry's dad killed his mum. But I think that's about it. That's like the only major thing that comes up. Whereas for Elizabeth and Darcy, it is like molehill after molehill. Like there's problems popping up all over the place and they have to go on more of a journey. Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I think Pride and Prejudice, it is a drama. You're right. They have to overcome so much, and Darcy has to change so much to win her because, just like you said, she has such high expectations for him. Whereas with Henry, it feels like he and Catherine are two best friends sitting on a couch about to watch Netflix if they lived in the modern day, and they're joking and laughing and playful. And maybe something about that is more realistic to certain relationships. A lot of people say you should end up marrying your best friend. And so I do like their playful dynamic, but maybe it's less dramatic. It's less,
but maybe that is the good thing. Yeah. Maybe that's the point that someone was making on the Reddit post where they said, in real life, you'd rather be married to Henry than Darcy, because I don't know if they could overcome the power struggle that's obviously present there. The fact that Darcy even has the thought process where he's like, I'm going against my family's expectations, and I've got major issues with the fact that you're not very wealthy and your family are aren't great socially. So do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like, yes, I know that he develops from that point and comes to just love Elizabeth regardless. But I'm like, would you want that point of contention? Like, I feel like that could come up again in an argument later in your life, you know, if you just rubbed each other the wrong way for whatever reason, like, you know, that power dynamic could come back.
Oh, I totally agree with that. Yeah, yes, I totally agree with that. I think what I like about Henry and Catherine's relationship is it feels more natural. And I do see them staying together forever. But they didn't have to overcome that much, like you said, so it's kind of anticlimactic. Whereas Darcy and Elizabeth come from two different worlds, different natures and everything. They have to overcome so much so that by the end when they get together, it's so climactic, it's so satisfying. And they still have a lot to work through. And, you know, I could see some couples counseling and potential divorce if they don't work out some more of their issues. I think the grain of hope is that there's a line that says something about Darcy opens up and mellows out and is a little bit more playful because of Elizabeth's influence on him. So hopefully that happens. But yeah, I agree with you.
I can get that for sure. I think what's great about Henry and Catherine as well is they already have so many things in common. Like, they have similar interests. Like, there's loads of points in the books where they talk about the novels that they love reading. They both love Gothic literature and Radcliffe's work. And I think in that sense, that's something that goes beyond just like the romance or the passion that you have for each other, and more the chemistry, just like the physical attraction. And I think that's the thing that maybe does like enjoy. I don't think you have to have exactly everything in common with your partner, but you've got to have things that you can do together that isn't, you know, like overly intimate. Does that make sense? Just like the general day-to-day stuff and like activities or interests, or how are you going to spend time together, like in each other's company? Whereas I feel like Elizabeth and Darcy is very just like high energy. Like you said, there's like a lot going on. It's a bit wild and crazy. And it's like, well, what happens when things are mundane and back to normal? You know, what do you bond over then?
And it's very, I love that you said that. Darcy and Elizabeth, it's very serious. I know Elizabeth herself is described as lively and playful and loving a laugh, but she's very intense with him and a little bit defensive. And so there's just a lot of intensity to that relationship. Whereas Catherine and Henry, it's just so lighthearted. And just like you said, you could see them just reading a book together and giggling. And there's something kind of sweet about that.
Yeah, I think so. But devil's advocate, I did see a couple of comments on the Reddit post that said that Henry Tilney's a bit patronizing, and maybe that would become an issue like later on. I don't fully see that myself. I think he's like really sarcastic, and maybe this is just because I grew up in like the UK and most people are really sarcastic and just, you know, we kind of take the mick out of each other a lot of the time, but in like this kind of sarcastic way where you're just, you know, poking fun at people. And he does that, like he's really, really bad for it. And so I'm like, I don't know if I see it as patronizing, like I just see it as banter, but I'm like, I can understand why other people might see it as, I don't know. What do you think? This is probably good to ask you, considering, you know, you grew up in the US.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I see why people would say that he's patronizing, but I agree with you. The way I define patronizing is when you say something like, I know better than you, and I'm going to be like pretty condescending about it. And instead of using the word patronizing, I would use the word incredulous. I think he's very socially savvy, and he sees people's flaws, and he sees the certain social dynamics that Catherine doesn't see. And I think he's kind of incredulous by her naivety. And I think he's kind of like, oh my gosh, she doesn't see that this person's a total a-hole, but he kind of finds it endearing. And so I feel like he's trying to tell her, but in a way where he's still like thinks it's super sweet and endearing. I don't think he's criticizing her or trying to condescend to her. He's taking the, well, this is such a British thing to say. I think it's banter too. I think he's kind of like, is that taking the mickey? Is that? Yeah,
taking the mickey. Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. But that, you know, you just made me think about something there as well, is Henry's very good at letting Catherine kind of make her own mistakes or realize like what social or realize what friendships aren't good friendships. So he lets her like figure out the Isabella situation like on her own. And he does say like, you know, he does give a few hints here and there, but he doesn't outright say to her like, Isabella's a bad friend, like you need to ditch her. Whereas Darcy he interferes in social situations that he doesn't think are right. Like look at the Jane and Bingley situation. Like he doesn't go and ask like, you know, Elizabeth, like, you know, how do you feel about this? What do you think's going on here? He doesn't ask Bingley, you know, what are your feelings? What do you think Jane's feelings are? This is not a discussion. He's like, I know best. I'm splitting them up.
Oh, you just blew my mind with that. That is so true. I feel like Henry sees how naive Catherine is, and he wants to give her hints. He wants to give her a little bit of a heads up. He does it in a playful way that I don't think is condescending, and he's still really endeared to her, and he likes her innocence. But if you care about someone and you see a bad dynamic, you don't want them to get taken advantage of. But you're right. He doesn't do it in a way that's super condescending and controlling. He respects Catherine enough to let her make her own decisions. That's such a good point. Whereas Darcy is arrogant enough to look at Jane and Bingley, make an assessment of the dynamic that was incorrect, where he's like, oh, Jane doesn't like Bingley. She'd just use him for his money. Doesn't get advice from anyone else, just makes that arbitrary decision. And then I can never get over the hypocrisy that he takes Jane away from Bingley and then is like, but I'm going to go after Elizabeth now. Okay. Yeah.
I love that he's like, he tries to make the point that he was being kinder to Bingley by separating him. He's got to suffer because he can't separate himself from Elizabeth. I'm like, oh my God. And can we just as well, like, can we just, like, Darcy's first proposal, I'm just like, I don't think I'd ever recover from that. That would sit with me. Like, some of the stuff that he said, I'd be like, look, I know you went on a journey and you did some great stuff, but I feel like some of those things would, like, linger in the back of my mind. I'd be like...
Yeah. Oh, man. I'm, like, just thinking of all the different...
It's like, we actually hate Darcy.
Oh, my God. Yeah, what he says about her family. Do you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your connection? Can you imagine someone saying that to you after they walk into the room? You think they pseudo hate you. You have no idea that they're in love with you. And then he just goes, you must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you.
Right?
By the way, your connections suck.
I am like in a whirlwind with you, friend. Like, I don't know what's going on. I actually love in like the 2005 one that she's literally just like gobsmacked, like, what, where the hell has this come from? Like, what are you on about? Yeah.
And then they add the part two where at the end of that, it looks like they're about to make out. The whole thing is so push and pull.
I know, it's like so all over the place. And then he's like, I love how instantly he needs to rectify the whole Wickham situation. He's like, I must write a letter about all of this. Like, and then like writes his life story. Like, for somebody who's been reserved for most of the novel so far, he really just like puts it all out in this letter.
I know. Oh my gosh. It's in written form. Like, if it got on the wrong hands and she decided to be spiteful, that part actually, that is very, again, they have such an intensity. That was very intense of him to do, but I also thought that was really brave of him to do, like, that he owned everything. And yeah, that makes me like him a little bit more again.
Yeah.
I'm all over the place too, clearly.
He was already vulnerable to propose, and for Elizabeth to reject him, and not even reject him slightly, to be like, I'm rejecting you and I'm going to tell you why. You know, I'm going to lay out your flaws right here. And then to go and write a letter where you basically talk about basically the mistakes you've made in the past and how it's like impacted your family. And also being like, I also interfered with my friend and your sister, but I'm okay with that situation that I did that. Man, yeah, he really lays it all on the line in just like that short amount of time. It's like, you know.
Yeah, it is such whiplash. It is so intense.
And this is going on when so many other things are happening. Like, they're visiting, like, Lady Catherine, you know, Fitzwilliam's popped up on the scene, the Collinses are pottering around. It's
Pottering around is a perfect way to describe Collins. Oh my god, I love that so much. Yeah, oh my gosh. I bet that Elizabeth, when she rejected him the first time, I bet that was the first time he had ever been criticized in his life with all of the sycophants and flatterers around him. I bet that's the first time someone put him in his place. Yeah, I seriously. He was treated like a king.
Yeah, I can see it. And so that's like sometimes why I struggle to compare the heroes, because I'm like, if they come from such different dynamics, and then the heroines that they're after are so different, which I think Catherine and Elizabeth are, I think it is slightly different. But I agree. I think in terms of passionate, exciting romance that, you know, you maybe want at some point in your life, like Darcy and Elizabeth is like, you know, that is exciting enough. Or if you want at the start of your relationship. But I feel like what Henry and Catherine have is something that you've, oh my God, I'm sorry, that's the ice cream van.
Ice cream van that comes to your house. Wait,
well, it doesn't just come to my house. It obviously comes to all of the houses. I'm just like my personal ice cream van. But
oh my gosh, you want to go get some ice cream? I'll wait for you.
Dairy.
Oh, that's right. Okay, never mind.
Really, it's just cruel. He just drives past and plays his tune, and I can't eat any of it. So funny. I can't remember what I was saying there, but I think I was saying that Catherine and Henry is, I think, what you want long term.
Yes, I agree. I think you want to be in, I think everybody wants that passionate, intense dynamic like Elizabeth and Darcy, and even on a more dysfunctional level like Wickham and Marianne, you want that, you know, just really dramatic, intense emotions. But in the long term, you want something more steady and lighthearted with shared interests like Henry and Catherine. The only thing that I would say that I would also want long term that I don't know if Henry has is I don't know if I'd want him to be so far in the background. Like, I do like that Darcy is really stoic and takes initiative sometimes. I think I would feel like protected and supported by the strength of Darcy's personality and the action that he takes.
Yeah, okay. I think that's definitely something interesting. And I think, so I was just thinking this from like my own perspective, is like Catherine and Henry, like Catherine's quite young when they first meet and they basically like grow up together. And it made me think of that, like my relationship with Nick is like, we met when we were 18 and we've kind of grown up together as well. And I'm like, I feel like it's good if you meet younger to have that space where you can still grow as an individual. Like, do you know what I mean? Someone to like not tell you what to do or not say to you like their own opinion, just be like, you know what, this is my thoughts, but like I'm going to let you live your life and make your own mistakes. I think that's good when you're young, if you meet someone when you're younger, because you still grow as your own person. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making any sense there.
That makes a ton of sense. I do think the point that you meet your partner in your life has a huge impact, and it should, if it's a healthy dynamic, it should influence the way you show up. Like, I have a close friend who met her now husband. They've been together for over 10 years, and they never would have worked if they had a dynamic where they had to be like front and center forefront in each other's lives nonstop. Like, they were really good at showing up for each other, being there for each other, but also they went to different colleges. Like, they let each other explore their individuality, and they weren't each other's everything. And that's why they ended up together and are in such a healthy space. So I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, I don't know what else.
We do not have an answer. Like, yes, loads of people love Darcy, and I genuinely think that's maybe just because I think Pride and Prejudice is just more well known and more popular, and people have seen the adaptations probably more than people have read and watched the Northanger Abbey adaptations. So maybe that's why it feels like there's more people who love Darcy over Henry. But I think once you've like read them all, I don't think it's as black and white. I don't think it's as clean cut as Darcy's the best and all the other heroes fall at the waistline. I mean, do you have a favorite hero?
Mr. Knightley.
Yeah, I'd say probably Mr. Knightley's mine. Maybe like a mixture of like Mr. Knightley and, oh, I don't know. Oh gosh, now we're getting into, I don't even know why I asked that because gosh, that's a hot topic in itself. But yeah, I like Mr. Knightley as well. So I feel like it is different once you've read all the books, because then you can take a better perspective if you look across the board at the different qualities and then what you want personally in a person.
I thought Edmund was your favorite, Izzy.
Do not speak to me about that.
Izzy is not a huge fan of Edmund.
Doesn't even fall in my hero category, okay?
Yeah. I get it. Well, you love Fanny too, so it makes sense.
I'm starting to think it's not that I hate Fanny, is that I actually really dislike Edmund in the fact that Fanny is so into Edmund just bothers me entirely. I'm literally just like, you know what, Fanny, you could have done so much better with somebody else. I could have liked you so much more had you, gone for someone else, because I feel like Edmund is totally problematic. But oh my gosh, I'm going to get into I can sit here for like 10,000 hours talking about Edmund and Fanny and Mansfield Park in general. So let's not get into that.
We'll go there another time. But I did love what you said about the exposure to Austen. I think you're right that Pride and Prejudice is the probably most exciting plot to follow. And I just think Pride and Prejudice has had the most exposure. So Mr. Darcy might be talked about because some people have only heard of and read Pride and Prejudice. And so if they had read all 6 novels, just like you said, they might not necessarily have Darcy be their favorite. And also I noticed that polarizing characters with a lot of strength in some ways, people tend to be more magnetized to those characters. So.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, I think that's a great way to wrap that one up. That was